Most of you aren't subscribed. Make sure to subscribe, as it helps out the channel. Without further ado, starting the series at the Regarden Magical Academy, the most prestigious of all magical schools, we see our MC watching various students perform magic feats. As for our MC, someone who has no magical aptitude, we see him on the 7th floor of the dungeon, training and slaying monsters with his sword as it's the only way he can grow. In the capital of magic, Urubis Regarden, students attend the Regarden Magical Academy, all answering basic questions regarding the creation of sulfur by channeling magic into Balka or Aragni dust, and with the sulfur a flame can be created. Spearheading the class, Professor Edward Serfence ends up asking our MC, Will Seffert, a 6th-year student accompanied by his familiar, Kiki, to demonstrate such an act. Flustered, Will has no choice but to head to the front of the class, ordered by Edward to demonstrate the simple sulfur creation spell. With all his might, Will attempts to infuse the ore and dust with magic, but upon failing, the entire classroom erupts into laughter. Disappointed, Edward voices how studying the theory won't get Will far in life, even if Will is considered an honor student for note-taking only. Among the students, a sudden burst of flame ignites the ore and dust, producing a potent blue flame, but this prompts the professor to remind the students to demonstrate only when asked. Speaking up, Scion Ulster apologizes for the sudden display of magic, smirking as Scion mentions how they believe Will needed help with a basic demonstration. Regardless, Edward casts an ice spell to put out the flames, reminding his students that magic in this world reigns supreme, especially since the heroes of their worlds are mages. Hearing Edward suggest that Will leave that academy for being magicless, Will steps outside for a breather, but is confronted by Scion, Lyral and Gordon, mocking Will for training in the dungeon again. At the same time Colette appears, ordering Scion to stop bullying Will, but hearing that Colette calls Will one of her friends, Scion takes the chance to remind Will that achieving the status of a Magia Vander is out of reach for a normie like Will. With Scion and his friends leaving, Colette tries to cheer Will up, pointing out how weird it was for Professor Edward to make fun of Will in front of the entire class, but Will admits that it was fine since Edward was right about him having no magic. Will changes the topic by telling Colette how surprising it is for a cute girl to be helping him out, shocking Colette as she demands to know if Will calls every girl he sees cute. Apologizing for the sudden compliment, Colette shyly asks Will to give her a moment, reminding herself that Colette Loire is from a noble family and should behave as so. Seeing Will glaring off into the distance, Colette asks what Will is thinking, happy to see Will admire the beautiful Magia Vander, the wizards that hold up the sky. Written in history, there was a time when the world was enshrouded in darkness by the celestial host, up until 5 powerful wizards fought back against the evil, casting a seal that opened up the sky. The title of Magia Vander has since been passed down to only the strongest of wizards, but Colette wonders if the Ice Maiden's wand, Albus Vina, is watching over them as they speak, surprised to hear that Will believes so. Flashing back, we see a young Will speaking with a young girl, Elfaria. Will is amazed to hear Elfaria tell him stories about the sun and moon in the sky, both agreeing to become Magia Vander if it means they can scale the tower and see the sunset. Sadly, Will and Elfaria's promise was one-sided, with Elfaria becoming the youngest person to achieve the title of Magia Vander, ultimately leaving Will behind. Having not given up, Will promises to one day meet Elfaria at the top of the towers, but is brought back to reality when Professor Warkener Norgram screams at Will for being reckless and venturing into the 7th floor of the dungeon. Will apologizes for being reckless, but seeing as he did indeed bring back the bones of an evil guard, Warkener awards Will with 2 extra credit points, pleasing Will and Kiki as Will is making progress. Warkener asks if Will is truly trying to obtain the Magia Vander status, reminding Will that he still needs to advance to the upper institute, meaning Will has to work on his writing, spell work and praxis in order to obtain 12,000 credit points. Since Will has no magic, he'll have to make up for the loss of credit points, but when Will says he'll simply overload on praxis credit points, Warkener states that it's impossible for Will to advance at his current rate. Seeing Will sulking, Warkener tells Will that he needs to focus on graduating first, reminding Will that he still has 4 credit points to obtain by the end of the week. Surprised, Will instantly begins searching for a monster that will fetch him 4 credit points, but seeing Will struggling to find a suitable monster, Warkener hints at a possible sighting of a Baskerville on the 6th floor. Grateful for the suggestion, Will gives Warkener a massive hug, but having heard everything, Scion rushes towards the dungeon, dead set on ensuring Will doesn't graduate. Having made it to the 6th floor of the dungeon, Will gets excited, having faced a Baskerville before, but upon seeing Kiki getting nervous for their upcoming fight, Will promises to be wary of the monster's fire breath, begging Kiki to help track down the monster. At the same time, Scion and his lackeys are also seen hunting for the Baskerville, but Scion gets pissed hearing his lackeys get cold feet, scared to be facing a Baskerville for the first time. Scion states that Will is not fit to be in the academy, attempting to use search on the monster, but out of nowhere a different monster appears, pummeling and killing Gordon in an instant. Having heard a cry for help, Will and Kiki instantly dart towards the screams, peeking around a corner only to spot Scion facing off against a evil sentinel, a monster worth 10 credit points and is classified as an over 5 enemy. Will knows that the monster shouldn't exist within the 6th floor of the dungeon, watching as Scion helplessly exhausts his mana, attempting to wear down the creature, but no luck. Knowing that he should help Scion out, Will wonders if he should really be saving the person that bullied him, choosing to let Scion die, but out of nowhere Will remembers Elfaria's words. Elfaria had once handed Will some glasses, happy to see Will as a kind person, but in the present, Will equips said glasses revealing that he's only kind as he wants to stand and be with Elfaria. As the monster brings its blade down onto Scion, Will dashes forth, heroically blocking the creature's slash. At the same time, we see Edward storming into Werkner's office, reporting that Scion and his lackeys have been missing, having ventured into the dungeons, and Edward wants Werkner to look for them with his familiar. Upon hearing that Scion has ventured into the 6th floor of the dungeon, Werkner reassures Edward that they'll be fine, heading over to a crystal ball, stating that Will can resolve the issue. Having parried several of the monster's slashes, Will runs circles around the creature, managing to sever one of the monster fingers. Pissed, the creature blows Will back, firing several pieces of debris in Will's direction, but having increased his speed, Will disappears, impaling the monster from behind. Seeing Will's movements, Scion is unable to believe Will is so manly, but at the same time, Kiki is seen televising Will's actions through the crystal orb, shocking Edwards as Will isn't a normal human. Werkner reveals that Will has an abnormal physique, having superhuman strength in tune with dwarves along with the observational skill to analyze and overcome any attack once he's seen it. Having severed the creature's weapon-holding arm, heading to retrieve the monster's blade, taking a stance and countering the monster's breath of fire, with a lightning speed slash. Having decapitated the monster, Will checks to see if Scion is okay, but both Scion and Edward refuse to accept a magicless student like Will to be so capable. Having returned to Werkner, Will officially gains an additional 10 credit points. Check out one of our other videos on the screen or in the info card above. Subscribe, like and comment.